Welcome to the Collecting Keys Podcast, the show where you'll learn how to use real estate to create massive income, not just passive income. Real estate doesn't have to be a get-rich-slow game. Listen to the country's top real estate operators, and you'll have all the tools you need to replace your W-2 income and go beyond in under 12 months. Ready to take things to the next level? Let's jump in with our hosts, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin, for today's episode of the Collecting Keys Podcast.
All right, Sam Wegert out of Charlotte, North Carolina. My man, I'm super excited to have you on the show. You are kind of one of the folks that I've met over the years where I'm like, dang, this guy's like doing some stuff, like some big stuff. So super excited to dive into that today. So for people who may have not heard about you before, let's give like a high-level overview of exactly who you are and what your business looks like.
Yeah, I love that intro. I've never been introduced that way before. Like, hey, this guy, he does some stuff. Like, that's cool. I actually like it. It's one of my favorite ways I've been introduced. So thanks for that. Yeah, guys, super honored, Dan and Mike to be on the show and to share a little bit. High-level view of me. And I can go as deep or as little or as much into my story and my background as you guys want, but built, scaled, and as of like 7 weeks ago, fully exited a chain of martial arts schools. So that was my main gig. That was where I cut my teeth on entrepreneurship, trained martial arts. I'm a 5th degree black belt, can kill you with this finger kind of stuff. But and then through that period of time, started investing in real estate and kind of fell into this idea of shared housing. Co-living is the new hip up and coming term that people are using, but it's really rent by the room. And so I've scaled that model and have teach people that model, and I'm working on some ground up development of that particular model and manage those units as well. And so kind of all in on this model. It's a way to solve affordable housing. And so that's what I do right now. And I think that's what we're here to talk about as well as real estate in general.
Have you ever met, there's a martial artist I follow on Instagram, or I used to. His name's Master Ken. Have you ever met this guy?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Awesome. Go look him up for our listeners if you haven't seen him. He's a real martial artist.
Is that like one of those like fake old dudes that like pretends to block people? Is that what you're talking about?
He's got this video that's like 100 ways to strike the groin. Yeah. That's the video everybody should start with. He's actually a damn good martial artist.
Oh, really?
But he makes he's like super good. He's like ranked in all these styles, but he makes so much fun of martial arts. Yeah. First, I hated him until I met him, and then I was like, all right, the guy's okay.
Yeah. He's like going so over the top with the gag that he's behind that you're just like, you can't take him seriously.
Super over the top.
Yeah. That's funny. I think I've seen like those videos get shared.
Well, you don't usually see that a lot in like martial arts, right? Where like it seems to me like a very serious discipline, right? Like that you're following when you're practicing these things. And so like he's definitely the antithesis of what you'd expect.
I mean, I can get behind that, honestly, Dan. That's kind of like us with property, and real estate investors, where we're out here like telling crude stories and like getting weird about some of the things, as opposed to people that are so like straight laced with their suits. We've had dudes that like showed up to this podcast that have on like a button up and like a tie, and I'm like, come on, bro, like what are you doing?
We should have, instead of like there's like bigger pockets, which is like the straight lace version, we could just call our podcast the dirty pockets from now on.
The dirty pockets.
That reminds me of an Instagram video I saw literally, I think it was just yesterday, where this guy was like, gets out of his BMW and he's like, how you know an agent is brand new and will not sell your house? And he's like, perfectly raised. And then he's like, how you know the agent's gonna like sell your house in 2 days? And he's got like stuff all over his shirt, he's like shorts and a t-shirt, he walks out.
Right. Yeah.
So true, man.
It's so true. Yeah. But no, it's awesome, man. So let's obviously want to dive into your real estate stuff. But really quick, let's talk about your martial arts studios and what like sort of scaling that and exiting that from an entrepreneurial side sounded like, because, obviously everyone listening to this show is interested in the real estate part, but a big part of what we dive into, and what we teach in our community and these different things is how to be a business owner. And the crazy thing about business is there's a lot of stuff that translates, whether you're trying to grow a real estate business or a martial arts studio. So, for sure. I mean, first off, I'm assuming you got into that because you did it as a child.
Yeah.
Right. And then growing and scaling and exiting that, like, what was that process like? Because especially when I think of like a martial arts studio, I'm usually thinking of, Johnny, what's his name in Cobra Kai? Who's like, he's like the washed up guy who goes and gets a place in like a strip mall and then like just wants to see kids kick each other in the head, but doesn't actually know how to run a business. But
I'm drawing a massive blank though. Who was like the really rich guy in Cobra Kai? The guy that set up the really nice chain of studios.
Oh yeah, what's his name? Yeah, he was what? Gosh dang, I'm drawing a blank too.
I can't think of his name right now. But yeah, there's the guy who like opens in the strip mall, and that's kind of like back in the 80s and 90s, right? When martial arts wasn't a commercialized kind of thing. It was people teaching
Terry
out of
Silver.
their basements.
That was
Silver,
Terry
right?
Silver. That was
Terry
his name.
Silver. So Terry Silver would be more. I mean, it's terrible because they kind of make him look really bad in the show. But that was probably more applicable to what we do, like super nice studios. It's a little bit more of a commercialized product, but we're still trying to teach really great values. And again, that show is probably the worst analogy I could make for what we used to do right now.
But it's most people's level of context, so I assume that it's fiction.
Yeah.
But you know, I was going to make a rude comment. I'll save that. Go for it.
So ultimately, martial arts was the business that really. So I was training when I was young. I was homeschooled, big family, 8 kids. I always tell this as part of my story, and so I really, I lacked a lot of confidence. I was home a lot with my family, just my family. Like we lived in the country, and my parents were like, "We don't want the government to educate you, so we're going to homeschool you." And the government, like the school system, actually like sued my parents. This was probably 30 some when my parents started homeschooling. This was probably closer to 40 years ago, 35 years ago, when it was like, "Wait, you can't do that." And my parents had to get a lawyer, and they fought it, and they were like under this religious exemption thing. And so obviously now with COVID, like homeschooling's taken off, and it's like
I was about to say, right? You're what we would call a progressive,
right? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And my parents were that before it was cool. You know what I mean? Before it was, and they were really, really, really ahead of the game. They were also doing crazy stuff. They were like, man, my parents were straight hippies when I think about it now. Like they were juicing, like before there was a juice thing on every corner now. And it's like all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But they got me in martial arts for confidence, for discipline. I was just kind of a wild child. Not that I got into a ton of trouble. I just had tons of energy, always bouncing off the walls. And so, big shout out. Martial arts changed my life in so many ways. And that's why I dedicated 15 years. I'm still involved in the staff members that have purchased the schools and things like that. But, martial arts changed my life. It made me, I don't know how else to explain it other than it made me somebody. Homeschool, introverted kid, 13 years old, a little awkward. That was like, boom, I can protect myself. I'm learning to strike hard. I'm learning to be, and it was just so good for me. So I'm highly recommend it for anybody, adults and kids alike, but definitely for kids. And that's really what our chain of martial arts schools focused on. Was we found a niche. There's really 2 ways you can go in the martial arts industry. You can go like MMA, pound, ground. We throw you in the cage and then get you ready for the UFC. And you can go that direction. The problem with that is your demographic is going to be people between the ages of like 15 and 30, right? So when people have the least amount of money in their life, when they're the most transient in their life. So from a straight business perspective, that has challenges, is just the straight truth, since we're on here and we're talking just business, not just martial arts. And the other thing is that type of training is a lot more intense. You're going to get hurt. It's not if, it's a matter of when you're going to get hurt. And when you get hurt, you don't come back unless you are very dedicated to getting into the UFC, right? And that's a very, very, very small percent of the population. So our model was kids between, families, parents with kids between the ages of 4 and 13 that want their kids to have more respect. Say yes and no, sir, yes and no, ma'am. Get along better with their teachers and parents. Stand up to bullies. Have some self-respect. And then we would rope the parents in and be like, actually, we're a family academy, so all of our parents train with their kids. And of course, it blew the parents' minds at first, but a lot of these parents, maybe they haven't worked out in a while or they have some sort of routine. And so we just really built a chain around this family concept. That was families all training together. There's no age segregated classes. I could have a 6-year-old and a 60-year-old in the same class. And martial arts was the means to the end. It was what got them hooked, having fun, but really it was a personal development program. Now, granted, they got a black belt. We still trained joint locks, arm bars and headlocks and pressure points and all of that. It just wasn't the difference between us and the MMA school is we didn't then go get in a cage and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Like it was, you get to train it and practice it, but you could still be a doctor and a lawyer and go to your work the next day and not have a black eye.
Yeah, so that's cool. So you took the no mercy part out of the Cobra Kai saying.
Exactly.
It was just strike first to strike fast. Yeah.
So, okay, this is interesting then. I'm assuming you started with one studio. Did you start ground up all 5, or did you buy, then build, or like what was the model there to get to 5, and like I guess why as well?
Yeah. I bought the first one from my instructor when I was 15 years old, actually. My parents loaned me 15
No
grand.
way.
I bought it for 15 grand. It was in a small town, Amherst, Virginia, 2,000 people. School had about 100 students, had a big lease, big space, 6,000 square foot space, way bigger than was needed, but that's what he had. He just thought if I built it, they would come. And like we all know, like sales and marketing, if you're in business, you're in, he would always tell us, you're in the business of sales and marketing of martial arts products, services, supplies. He'd be like, what business are you in? I'd be like, well, I think I'm in the business of teaching classes. No, you're in the business of sales and marketing. If you don't do a good job of that, nobody comes, right? So really drilled that lesson in from a very early age about sales and marketing. That was very, very valuable to start my business career off with a mentor like that. But I bought the first one. Then I moved to the town of Charlottesville, Virginia, which is where UVA is, University of Virginia, very popular school on the East Coast here. And then that one I started from the ground up. So that one I literally rented so this proves my concept about sales and marketing. I rented this, I went to a hotel and I said, hey, will you rent me one of the little spaces, the smallest meeting space they had? It was like 20 feet by 20 feet. And I rented it 2 nights a week. And I think it was like $75 a night. And I only needed it for like 2-3 hours to teach classes, but it was open 24 hours so people could come in. I left my little sign there and I built it from literally scratch. I would go out into all the parking lots of all the grocery stores and I would just walk up to people as they were putting groceries in their car and I would stop and I would bow and be in my full karate uniform. This is kind of like straight out of Cobra Kai now that I'm thinking about it. I'm like, excuse me, I'm doing a survey. Would you mind answering 3 quick questions for me? And I give them this little survey. And I don't want to go too crazy deep into this, but that's how I built this second school. And that school I'm really proud of. It went on under my brother's leadership, who when I left, I put him in charge to become the top 1% of all schools in the nation in terms of income produced, students it had, and just in the black belts that it produced. And it produced some great champions as well in the sport karate world. And so really proud of what that went on to become. That was ground up. People were coming into this little school, enrolling, paying in full for 3 years just because of the vision that I set and the charisma.
Yeah.
And so then I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. I bought 2 schools here. I bought 3 schools here over time, and then I built 3 more here. Yeah. And so from the ground up, that we kind of started from the ground up. So yeah, it's kind of a mixture of everything, and that's a challenge. You said, how do I build? I mean, built it painfully. It's a brick and mortar anything. I like. Some people can make it work really well. It was a very difficult. I think it set the stage for the difficulty of being an entrepreneur for me in a lot of ways.
Right. That's so awesome though, man. Cause like you did what I think most newer entrepreneurs need to do is you figured out how to make money first. And then you worked on kind of like growing it and everything after that. So you had the vision, you went and you sold that vision to people. People bought into that. And that's really no different than any other service or business. So many people, when they try to be a new entrepreneur, they go and they like find the person on Fiverr to make their logo and their website and all sort of things. And now I'm going to sell these widgets, but no one wants your freaking widgets. Like sell some widgets first, sell a service first, and then do it. Just like we see it with investors, you have so many people that they will go and they will announce that they are starting their brand new investment company. They've never even made an offer on a property yet. They've never, like analyzed a deal. They've never walked a hoarder house. They've never been cussed out by a seller. Like, how can you honestly say that you want to start this business if you haven't experienced it? Right. And you did like the epitome of guerrilla marketing, dude, of like getting out there in a gi and bowing to people in a parking lot. Yeah. How old are you when you're doing this? 35? So, dude, I'm kidding.
So I started when I was 15 doing the bowing and stuff. Yeah. And when I first started, I would have tears. Like I would cry. I'd go in. So I'm an introvert and I'm just like, people were rejecting me, yelling at me. I'd go back into the office and be like, just have to regain myself emotionally and be like, go back out. Cause I had to get 5 appointments a day. And my instructor, who was also like my business mentor that I was paying at the time, was like, yeah, you don't leave until you get 5 appointments. If you're at CVS, like, I was like, how long do I need to stay? He's like, you can stay an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. You can stay all day. You got to get 5 appointments,
appointments.
So I'll tell you what that does though, man. That makes you insane at persuasion. Cause like you need the appointment and that person's giving you one. If you've already been there 3 hours, like that next person that comes out is giving you an appointment. Yeah, so many good business lessons from that. Just in terms of persuasion and necessity, right? But to your point, Mike, I think people major in minor things. I think Tony Robbins says that a lot. Like when you major in things, my instructor had a comment. He would always say, Sam, you're spending too much time on busy work. And I'd be like, well, what is busy work? I don't know. How do you know it's busy work? I'm actually really busy. He goes, I know it's busy work because I look at your numbers. He goes, busy work is anything that won't make you money today. That was his kind of extreme definition of like, otherwise it should be done after 9 p.m. was what he would, because our schedules were always a little later. And so our prime time was like anywhere from 1 p.m. to 9. That's when we could sell memberships and people would come into school. He was like, you do all that crap. You run credit cards and send emails and open your inbox. He would always tell me too, he had this funny saying. He'd be like, if you get back to me during prime time too fast, I know you ain't working. He's like, if I text you at 4 o'clock and you get back to me in 30 minutes, I know you ain't working. Like you should not be getting back to me. That is busy work. Go sell some memberships. So just these like hardcore kind of like straight up, no holds barred business lessons that were like, it really made you think. And he was very old school. So not all of it, I think, applies 100%, but those things that I just shared, I've definitely kept with me. Even into the real estate business.
I mean, what you're saying from what I understand about business is, I mean, I've learned this kind of the hard way over the years is like marketing and sales are business. Like that's what is the lifeblood of it. So you need to be doing those at a high level. And I really love this. Like, this sounds like your coach, your mentor, what I can't remember. Is he the owner of the first studio? Is that how right? Like, he's driving some seriously good lessons into you.
Yeah. It was invaluable, which plays right into this point of, I know you guys mentor people in real estate. I mentor people in real estate. Plays right into this point of like anybody listening to this, like step 1, do not pass go, do not collect $200 unless you have a mentor. Like I wouldn't have gotten past one location if I didn't have someone drilling these lessons in me. I was 15 for God's sake. And a lot of us are we might not be 15 by age, but we're where I was. If you're starting real estate investing or, we don't have that knowledge, whatever it is that keeps us back from scaling. And so by far, someone that's willing to tell you the freaking truth and like rile you up a little bit, that's the best person to have on your team, right? Like, so definitely a step to scaling for sure. Can't talk about it enough.
Absolutely.
Can I share one lesson that I learned along the way though on that business that I think would help people?
Sure.
It came from a seminar I went to, but it really, Gary Vaynerchuk is big on, I had an opportunity to meet him a couple of years ago. And the number one thing he drilled into my head was like self-awareness. He's like, man, you got to know yourself. Otherwise you're going to be out there just spinning your wheels, not doing shit. And I said, okay, well, like, how do you know, how do you get to self-awareness? And he goes, well, you got to try a lot of things. You got to fail a lot of times. You got to really take that time to reflect. But I think in business, the self-awareness comes down to knowing 3 things. What like I would say business personality are you? And this has helped me a lot. And I think there's 3. Number 1, there's like the artists in business. And I think the artists, I'll use the football team as an analogy. The artists are the guys playing the football. They're playing the game. They geek out about the craft. And we all know people like this. I was listening to a podcast by Tom Bilyeu. Tom Bilyeu is a great business guy, but in his core, he's an artist. He geeks out about like how to ask questions and how to respond. Like he's an artist. He's a creative artist. So that's the guys that geek out about how to play a game. And then there's the second business personality, if you will, is manager leaders. And manager leaders are the guys that geek out about 2 things, or guys or girls, systems and people. And they're just like, they like to play chess with it. Well, if I move this person, and they're, of course, if I use the same analogy, like the managers of the football team. They're like, I'm going to trade that guy for this guy. I don't really care about the emotions. I'm just trading them because I need to do this. And then I put here, and then that's going to build my team. And then you have the third personality type in business, which is like, I call it the Donald Trumps of this world. They're pure entrepreneurs. And I don't mean a lot of us are entrepreneurial, but in our core, we're not entrepreneurs, right? We're just like, they would sell any business in a heartbeat. There's no emotional attachment. It's about the money, and that's it. And that's the guys that own the teams, right? They're selling them. Mark Cuban just sold a big piece of his team. Like, it's less of an emotional game. And I think if you can understand, the E-Myth talks about this so well. Artists all of a sudden decide to become entrepreneurs and they're like, wait, this doesn't work. I think understanding who you are in your core lets you know who you need on your team. And I'm an entrepreneur in my core. I like to make money and I like to make deals happen. I'm not really an artist. I never was the best martial artist. I didn't geek out about the kicks and the punches and the things like a lot of my guys would geek out about for hours. I was like, they'd go to these seminars and be like, well, that's cool. Like, that's a punch. What do you want? And I wasn't a good manager leader. Like I had to bring people in that were like, hey, let's move this person here. Let's move him to that. I just wanted the thing to make money. I think when you understand that, you can really play to your strengths. You're way the freak happier, and you know who to go out and get to partner with.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Really was valuable.
Great insights. That's very valuable.
That's super valuable. I know you got me sitting here thinking, like, well, which one am I exactly?
Yeah.
I know I'm not the artist, but am I the making money one, or am I kind of the manager one? Probably somewhere in the middle. But that's super interesting though. And I
love it.
that. Awesome, man. So you grew that chain, you sold the business, you said 7 weeks ago. Congratulations on that too, by the way.
Yeah.
So I mean, I personally would love to dive into that, but a lot of people here want to hear about the real estate. So we can chat about that offline, about your exit, what that looked like. But along the way you got into this, co-living, rent by the room style of real estate investing. So first off, what exactly drew you to that initially? Because I feel like that's a pretty new concept. I know you've been doing it for a little while. And how exactly did you do it in a way that's allowed you to scale like you have? Because I know that you have a very successful business doing that now.
Yeah. The origin story in like a minute or less is basically I rented rooms. Keep in mind, I come from a big family because I didn't want to live alone.
Okay.
And like, I wasn't used to living alone. I'm always used to my siblings picking on me. Right. So I rented rooms. Big time banker friend of mine, very successful. His name was Jason. First friend I ever had in Charlotte. Pulls me aside and is like, hey, I know you're like renting rooms. He's like, I'm just curious. He's the numbers guy. He's like, how much are you like, how much is the whole house renting for? And I like did some math and I was like, I don't know, man, this house is like, I guess if I count myself as a renter, I'm in the primary bedroom. I guess it's like 2,850. And for whatever reason, it just kind of blew his mind. He was like, man, it's so cool. Like because I would tell them how easy it was to fill up with tenants. And I told him how much fun I was having, like hanging out with my housemates and stuff. And it just kind of blew his mind. And it blew my mind that it blew his mind. Cause he was like, that house would only rent for like $1,300 normally.
Yeah.
And so I just being crazy and obsessive and the type of person, and I like to make money too. I was like, well, I wonder if I could do, because I only had 4. It was me plus 3 people. I said, I wonder if I could do 5 people in a house. And then I was like, I wonder if I could do 6. I was like, what if 7 people could share a house? What if 8 people? What if, and again, there's a much longer story here, but like, what if 9 people? And then I'm like, what if I could just go back to my roots, 8 siblings, 2 parents, 10 people in a house? Last 2 houses we launched were 10 rooms, right? So it's like, this is shared housing at a little bit of a different level. And I know that sounds insane and crazy to some people. And there are lots of systems. So I usually get 2 things when I tell people that I help 10 people share a house together. I either get like, how do you keep all the tenants from killing each other?
Right.
And then the second thing I usually get is like, that sounds like the worst product ever. Like, who would ever want to live in there? Yeah. And so demand is higher than it's ever been. And we could talk about all kinds of affordable housing stats for that. That's number 1. Number 2 is the product that we produce. If you were to walk into one of our co-living homes, you would think it's a 5-star Airbnb. And I wish I can even show pictures, at some time, or send you guys pictures or whatever. But like you walk in,
you should send us some photos and we'll put them in the show notes for people to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I can show you some common areas that you're just like, what? Yeah. And so that, when you have an amazing product, people want to live there and it's a reduced rate. It's about half of what, half to 75% of what they would pay, at a studio apartment, or for housing in another area, in a nicer area. Maybe it's a little higher than that. Maybe it's closer to 75%. There's utilities in there you got to work out because they get utilities included usually on their co-living rent, but then if they rent a studio apartment, they got to add utilities onto it. So there's a little discrepancy there. Cool. And then we keep people from killing each other by having this amazing vetting process where we share with them a vision of creating community housing where people are just encouraging each other. It's a positive place and it's safe and it's quiet and it's clean. Those are, by the way, the 3 key things you have to do in co-living to scale it. You have to be able to do safe, you have to be able to do quiet, and you have to be able to do clean. So if you can vet for those things and have systems around keeping it safe, door locks on the doors, obviously full background checks for someone coming in, no weapons in the common space, things like that. If you have systems to keep it safe, you're going to win. If you have systems to keep it clean, we now have professional cleaners go into the common spaces once or twice a month. We have a checklist that everybody has to support with, or they can opt out for a fee, right? Systems like that. And then, so I said clean, and then quiet. Headphones hours after 10 on weekdays, after 11 on weekends. So everything goes to Bluetooth. You can watch your TV. No TVs in the common space. We used to do that. We thought it'd be really cool. Now we don't because it just causes commotion. And then obviously things like taking care of parking and making sure it's in the right neighborhood. You're not putting these in A+ or even A- neighborhoods, right? You're putting these in C or B neighborhoods that kind of fits the neighborhood. So we can go into the weeds on that with any questions you guys have, but I just wanted to kind of address maybe some of those big things that I know get asked when I say 10 people sharing a house together.
So are these 10-bedroom houses then?
You're converting. Basically.
You're converting garages. Yeah. You're converting garages, basements to get the 10 bedrooms. And do you have to add additional bathrooms? I'm curious of what the transition, like if you could maybe go through what a typical acquisition would look like and what you do to prep, it would be really cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, for a 10 bedroom, you need at least, the formula goes like this. If you have a 1,500 square foot house, it's going to be 4 rooms. I've looked at thousands of houses, you guys have as well. So, there's just like some themes that start to play out. Every 250 square feet you add to that house, not as in like an addition, but if you find a 1,750 square foot house or 2,000, another house, you're going to add a room. So 1,750 square feet is 5 rooms, 2,000 is 6 rooms, 2,250 is 7, 25 is 8, 2,750 is 9, and then 3,000 would be 10. And I know that just unless it's like this huge open concept with 30-foot ceilings, that's just like really hard to break up. We're looking for more of these houses that are a little bit more boxy. They've sat on the market a little bit longer. They're a little bit older. And you're converting dining rooms, you're putting walls and doors, and then you're trying to keep at least a 3-to-1 bedroom to bathroom ratio, never higher than that. Lower than that is fine. If you have a 2-to-1, 2 bathrooms sharing or if you have, in a perfect world, some of the development projects I'm working on right now, it's private baths. Everybody gets a private bath. That's perfect world. Okay. But it's really hard to do in a single family house that you're converting, right? You could, but it just be odd. So we just try to make it kind of still flow like a house. We want it to feel like a house. Home is a better word because we really do a great job on the interiors and make it really, really, really pop. And then, so we'll put the money into the doors. We'll put the money into the bathrooms. And then one of my favorite things to do right now is to take the garage and convert that to common space because it's cheaper to do. I can stick a little heater in the window and have a heater AC and it's good, at least in North Carolina, right? And then I convert almost all the space that's in the house that's already heated and cooled very well into bedrooms, except for the kitchen, obviously. Now, some companies will tell you don't have a common space. Some of the biggest companies will say, we don't want a common space. It causes issues. One of the ways that I separate myself from those companies is by making this model more about community. So I require for my company to manage a property like this, I require a common space. And we put desks in there so it becomes a co-working space as well. We make it really nice. We'll put some quiet games in there and just a space where people can kind of connect. And that's a big piece of what we're trying to create versus just room. And it becomes a little bit more like a rooming or a boarding house. That's not what
it seems like there's probably 2 models here. One is like you just said, a rooming boarding house, and one is more lifestyle community driven.
100%. Great way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like more of a hospitality business at that point, as much as like a rental property. And I think that what a lot of people in traditional real estate investment, they think about this, they're trying to view it strictly as a long-term rental where you just like have this giant house and you're putting a bunch of people that may or may not be crackheads in a house together and hopefully they don't stab
we'll
each
call
other.
It a halfway house in Spokane.
Right. It's like it's what we call a halfway house. But like with what you're providing, where you're making the living area sort of enticing, you're having a cleaning service that does it. You're having a list of roles and responsibilities people have to volunteer to do. You are having a level of community around it. It's like, it's funny. It almost sounds like like an apartment complex or something that you live in like in college, right? Like a theme house, or is that's a thing that people would do? Yeah. But in the right areas, I could totally see that being desirable. Totally. It's funny, even like thinking about myself when I graduated from college or I was younger, I would have totally been into something like that because it would have saved me money and it would be a great way to like meet new friends, especially if you were new to an area.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
With this style of model, I know for a fact this would be something that would vary in success based off of the town that you're in. Because, for example, in more rural towns or like where we're at in Spokane, there just isn't like I would say like a culture around that. So it'd be kind of a weird thing to sell. But like more specifically, how do you deal with, I assume there's like density restrictions or things around like these style of houses. Like you can't just throw up 10 adults with 10 cars living in a house in a single family residential neighborhood, or at least I wouldn't assume that you can. So like what sort of challenges do you deal with on that end?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we could spend every second talking about this. I'm going to give a high level overview of how the big tech companies are doing this and how we're modeling. My company is modeling after them. when you walk, I think they recently changed these rules, but when you walk into an establishment that doesn't have an ABC license to sell alcohol, but they do serve like beer and wine, they make you buy they make you buy like a $1 membership at the door. And now because you're a member, they can kind of skirt around this restriction and they can serve you beer and wine. Yeah. So that's one example. I'm going to tie it in a moment. It's one analogy. The other analogy would be similar to what you said, Mike, about, being in college, like would be a fraternity house. You've got members of a club, and these members of a club have access to this house, right? And so, yes. So in essence, the way that this is working, and I had a call. I got on. There's a company out there, the largest co-living company in America right now. It's called Pad Split, and they're just a management. They don't own the properties, where I help people actually find and acquire the properties. But I got on the phone with their head legal counsel and said, how many times have you been shut down by a jurisdiction? And they have like 10,000 rooms in like 30 cities or something like that. And they said that we've never been shut down. And I was like, okay, tell me what's going on. And so we kind of copied our legal model after theirs. And in essence, it's this membership-based model. It is, I have a company, I'll try to do this in the camera here. I got a company that owns the property, and it's going to rent. An LLC in the United States is considered one entity, one person, right? I'm going to rent it to one person, and that's going to be another LLC. And this LLC happens to have a bunch of members, and those members get access to the house. That's the simplest way I can explain it without going into details. So instead of me signing leases with all of my people, I'm signing membership agreements, right? They're members of that. They're members of this company, and then they get access to it in the home. And then you could say, well, hey, like you've got too many people living here, but I really don't. I have members that have access to an asset that they're somewhat a part of, that they're renting as one person. And there's more nuances to that. And if you maybe have some specific questions, I can go into it. But basically, that is the general high-level view of how some of these things are being restricted.
So they're a member. How does this start to affect things like landlord-tenant laws? What happens if you have to evict these people? Yeah. I assume it's a different process. Yeah. Is there any more rules and regulations that you need to follow around, like allowing them to have, say, like pets or like service animals or kids, or like dual occupancy if it's a couple? Like, because now like a lot of the traditional rules that we have as a landlord tenant relationship are going to be completely out the window if they're just like a member of your club.
If you're a membership based organization, and do not quote me, I told someone the other day I was going to find this, but I do know there is, I'll have to do some more research on it, but there's a US code, there's a federal law that basically allows membership-based organizations to not be restricted by fair housing laws. So you're technically exempt from fair housing laws if you're a true membership-based organization.
Interesting.
Because you have to be able to like choose who you let in and who you let out. So yes, and then if you're a true membership-based organization, in essence, if you terminate their membership or they terminate their membership, then they're trespassing, and you move the shit out.
Then you just go get the cops.
Yeah. So why would I not just turn all of my rentals into a club? I was thinking the same
thing. Right. They're all clubs now.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
That's probably a question a lawyer should answer. I do think there are some, I think depending on the state, there are some states that have tried to claw some of that back and still apply tenant landlord laws to that. I'm in a very landlord friendly state here in North Carolina. So we don't, we haven't had any issues with it here. I haven't had to do that, but that's, if we're talking letter of the law, that's how it's written to work.
So I have like a totally in the weeds question that have people know nothing about. With this sort of setup, is this still considered passive rental income to the IRS, or do you have to pay active income on this as basically business revenue, or can you use passive real estate losses to offset this revenue that you make?
Yeah, keep in mind, I am renting my home
to the LLC.
Yeah, so you're still ownership
so I'm still renting it. I'm just getting all of the dues, right?
Your fixed rent is all the expenses are the same. All that. Okay, that's it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's freaking sharp, man. That's awesome. Let's just get people excited. Give us some numbers on this, so people kind of know what exactly you can make from these houses. I know you and me talked about this a little bit on Instagram, and it can get pretty wild.
Yeah, and before I talk about some numbers, I think when people say, because I think people are really interested in this model, but they'll kind of like hear some of the things we've just been talking about. They're like, okay, like it's a little nuanced. Like I'm just gonna buy a single family house and I'm gonna let it, break even or net $100, right? And like because it's like, at least I'm in the game and I'm buying real estate. And so I think when I start to talk about numbers, when people are like, okay, wait a second, maybe I'll do some nuances, right? Like maybe I'll handle some nuances. And we've created a lot of systems to handle the nuances for you. And then my last like little pitch for people, my little spiel is like, when you think about this model, you need to add two things to your thought process. Number one, you're going into something that's a blue ocean. So think Airbnb back in 2011 when it was getting up and going. Blue ocean is there's not a lot of people there. Now, not every system has been solved yet, but that's a great time to be in something if you want insane cash flow, right? You're at the forefront of it. And then the second thing I like to tell people is you need to be thinking about what this solves. This is definitely a social entrepreneurship type thing. You are solving affordable housing. That's just not me saying this. That's the U.S. Department for Housing and Urban Development came out in 2021, January 15th, 2021, and said, we believe affordable housing can be solved by co-living. And not only that, we will allow housing choice vouchers to now be used, if you follow this formula, for rooms. So I can get someone that's got a voucher. I can be like, yo, I can rent you 2 rooms. I'll take your guaranteed government rent. Now you may not want to do that. You got to follow their little, frankly, BS formula on how to value that room, but it is what it is. Right. And like, that's pretty cool. So in essence, if you can rent, I'll give you numbers from the last one I launched. You know, it would have normally rented on the open market for probably $2,400. We filled it in 30 days and it rents for $8,550.
Wow.
So you are more than tripling, right? The rent on this particular home. And what we're seeing in the market right now, depending on where you are, we're seeing double, triple, or quadruple, even sometimes if you get these little niche markets of what you could get for rent on a home. So you're actually able to cash flow on single family homes with people in the homes that are, and they're not like Airbnb where it's like I get a guest every weekend. This is we've had people stay 10 years. I've had people with me for 10 years living in the home. So it can become, to the right demographic, it becomes home. This is where I'm going to live, right? A service worker, someone who's making.
You've been doing this for 10 years. Holy smokes.
Yeah. I mean, I bought my first one in 2011.
Wow.
Yeah,
and it was a real slow burn for a bunch of years because I was building my
Yeah.
martial arts schools and whatever. And we've really focused on it now. But
what do you do from an underwriting standpoint? Do you underwrite it as if it was a single family home? So you're not like, I guess what I want to get at is, do you overpay for these houses and then put a bunch of money into them so then the ROI is a little different? Or is it like, hey, no, I could sell this house for the value, whatever, I'm buying it off the MLS, this is its value, and then you have to put some more money into it to modify it. How do you come up with this?
Yeah, we're buying. I bought, me and my students, you know, we represent about 1,000, maybe a little bit more now, but about 1,000 doors kind of around the United States, 1,000 co-living doors. And you know, we're buying just about everything on the MLS, which is pretty crazy to think like I can get a deal that still cash flows 15 to 20, 25% cash on cash on a deal I'm putting 10 to 20% in, you know? And then, so we're buying on the MLS. We're paying, I would say, market rate. Like obviously we're trying to negotiate, but it's on the MLS. So it's going to be, it's fairly market rate. And then we're putting in whatever money we need to convert. So if we have to add a bathroom or could take a half bath and add it full, we're doing that. We're adding the doors, we're adding the walls as well. There is a marketplace for co-living homes now that's just starting. And we did get one bank to commit, a local bank, albeit, but they did commit to us and say, we will value these homes at a cap rate instead of, this is a bank, frankly, to be honest, I've been working with them for the last like 8 years. They've given me millions of dollars to buy these homes. So they kind of get it. They understand the model. They've seen the numbers for a while now. And they're just like, we'll start evaluating your single family homes based on a cap rate and refinance them based on that, which is insane. Cause like, if I don't go comp based value, my home, the home next to it's producing 2,200, mine's producing 8,500. Like I'm going to get a valuation that's going to be insane based on that. Right.
Totally.
So I guess what I'm saying is I think there's some value in not always having to think, oh, I've got to convert this back to a single family home. I think there is a marketplace to sell it as a cash flowing asset. And if we can get more banks to recognize that, then I think we'll be headed in the right direction. But the truth is, it's way more stable than Airbnb. And banks underwrite based on Airbnb right now. So it's just a matter of time when they're like, wait. We've been underwriting based on Airbnb. Let's underwrite on these guys that are living in these homes for years and paying it as rent for a long time. And so that's what I think will come down the pipeline in the next year or two.
Yep. Yeah. There's so many opportunities for this business too. Have you heard of crash pads before? the concept of pilot crash pads. Like
Yeah,
there's so many niches, right? And we've talked about like even and I would love to get your opinion on this. Like we've been doing like midterm rentals for traveling nurses, but is there maybe even just near hospitals the need for medical professionals to have a crash pad essentially or something like that because they're traveling? And it just seems like there's a lot of different industries out there now that this would cater to.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because like, talking about having the banks sort of start to recognize it. The reason it hasn't happened yet is, like you said, it's still in like the blue ocean phase. They're acknowledging Airbnb now, but they weren't doing that a couple of years ago. It's taken forever for them to be able to do that. And then it's only a matter of time where they do this too. So people that are like in your position, when banks do start to acknowledge it and agree to finance these appropriately, you're going to be making off like a freaking bandit, man. You'll be able to offload all those to some hedge fund for like a massive multiple, or even just a local operators that, want to do the Cody Sanchez buy a business. You're like, here, you want to buy an entire group home for a 5x multiple because this will be the return on investment. Right. I mean, that's going to be a great place to be in.
That's the play.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's the play. I like it, man.
Nice, man. That's super cool. So, I guess so going into this, where are all your properties based out of? Are they all in Charlotte?
My personal ones are in Charlotte and then a town called Asheville, which I was going to address that because you mentioned Spokane being a little rural. So I launched one. This model works anywhere there's a need for housing. And obviously, if you know your market.
Yeah, but Asheville's like bougie rural. We know Paul Xavier down there. We actually did some marketing and stuff down there for him. Yeah, I'm trying to find some off market stuff, and like it's like nice. Like there's like Spokane's more like so. The joke about Spokane or like thing you see on people's bumper stickers is keep Spokane kind of gross. Like that is that is.
Well, yeah, we don't have. I think too is we don't have like a part of town where people desire to live close to because like our downtown metro people are actually like leaving. And so it's not like that, what I mean? Like, there's not a proximity thing, but there is definitely a lot of need for rent by the room housing. And we've seen it. It's just not like cool people doing it. you know what I mean? Like doing it for the community. They're doing it because they have to. You know what I mean? So that's where I would be skeptical of this, but I do think there's probably a growing opportunity.
What do you mean doing it because they have to?
Like child molesters, drug addicts. What else have we bought? Special needs people.
They can't get a normal place because they're
required to live there. Right. Yeah. So we do have that, and there are landlords that cater to that. But there, I could see potentially a growing need, location based, depending on location in Spokane, where this could work.
Here's my question:
Sure.
what is the average studio rent in Spokane for a studio apartment? And this is, I think, a lot of times what it boils down to.
Probably $900
to $1,000. Like if it's a nice place, $1,000. Yeah.
Okay, so in Charlotte, it's almost double that.
Okay,
for a nice place, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's some if you think about where does everybody that works at Target and Walmart and the gas station and put your luggage on the planes and put your tires on your car that are making between 25 and 60 grand a year, right? Where are they living? And they're not paying 2,000 or 8. They're not in Charlotte, at least. They're not paying 1,800 plus utilities to go live. It's just not happening, right?
Yeah,
totally.
And so, but they probably could afford $900 for a decent place. That's
sometimes.
Well, here's where I think
used to live. Oh, go for it. I said they used to live in a place called Camp Hope, which was a homeless camp, but they shut it down.
Here's what I would say is we do have a very large university presence for adult learners in Spokane because we have a medical school here. We have basically, I think 2 or 3 schools that are offering medical training and stuff like that. So when I say location based, I do think for some of those more transient type people that have to be here from an education standpoint, want to be near a university, but they're an adult. They're not a college kid anymore. Right. I think you could rent those rooms for $400 to $600 each in a 4 to 6 bedroom home, no problem. I do this rent by the room for college students. I have a couple student rentals and it works great. But there's always still a weird demand when they graduate, but they decide to stay local and they want to hang. They still want to live with 3 of their friends, but they're like, "What, rent's $2,000 for this place?" You know what I mean? Right. And so they're looking for a 3-bed, 2-bath, and they don't want it to be in a bad neighborhood. But the prices for that for a college student who's maybe doing an internship and just graduated or starting out, whatever, there is that need. So I'm trying to bridge that gap, and I see what you're saying, and it could work potentially anywhere. We just might not be seeing the exact same numbers you are in a really popular metro like Charlotte.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think the thing is, so like, you know, we very rarely cater to college students at all. That's just not our market. There's whole companies that just, they focus on that. They can give those people exactly, you know, they can give college students exactly what they want, right? The proximity, the amenities, all of that. We are, and I would highly recommend anybody going into this model to not niche down too much. Because I get that a lot. I'll be like, well, I'm going to do nurses. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this and do this. Like, you know, if you vet the tenants well, you can just open it up for working professionals and you'll be more full. And I think that is the biggest need to be served through this model is working We're actually seeing two big groups. We're seeing the people you just mentioned, Dan, of like, they're out of college, they have some debt, they can't really afford, they're in their first job, they're in their second job, they just haven't been able to like crack to that $75K a year job yet. They're still at 50 and they don't want to live with mom. They're still at 50K, but they want to live with mom. Okay, that's a whole bunch of people, unfortunately, in the United States right now between the ages of, you know, 22 and unfortunately 32, 35, 37, you know? Yeah. Like that's a big group of people. More and more with incomes not increasing as much as housing costs. So that's number one group. Number two group we're seeing is fixed income, 55 plus. People that are like, I don't mind living with someone. I got a fixed income. I live on Social Security. I live on this, and I can pay $850 a month. You know, by the way, that's cheap for Charlotte. Sorry, you guys are doing studio apartments for $900, but like, you know, so I think there's something to that of just like, I think the more open you are to that whole demographic of working professionals, we've found that we just get more leads, we stay more full, and it just creates a better product overall. Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
That's awesome, man. I love it. Well, dude, I feel like we could sit here and talk to you forever on this. I love your topic. I love your energy around this. You're obviously so passionate about it, and you've built something that's super, super awesome.
Thanks, brother.
So I guess really quick before we dive into the end of show questions, what'd you say your total portfolio size is now?
Mine personally is 300.
Okay.
No, mine personally is 200. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My wife and I own 200 properties.
Oh shit.
200 doors.
Okay.
We, not including like short-term rentals and some commercial spaces that we own.
Yeah.
That I rent to my martial arts schools. But we manage 100 more. And we have 180 in the pipeline right now to come live in the next, that are either under rehab or closing or whatever. Because my company helps people acquire these.
Yeah.
And then I run a mastermind that we probably in that mastermind, we probably represent about 1,000 to 1,200 doors around the United States.
Yeah.
Dang.
So I think it's small. I mean, in terms of the need, we're very, very small.
But in terms of
a lot of tenants, really is what that is. I'm hearing when you say doors, I'm hearing tenants. That's a lot of tenants to manage. That's big. That's big time.
Yeah. So it's small relative to something. It's very, very impressive relative to most things. Right. Totally. So that's very, very awesome, man. And
thanks,
if that doesn't give all the listeners a sort of like belief that you're a true operator, I don't know what does, because that's pretty wild. So awesome, man. Thank you. Sam, I really appreciate you sharing all this information, dude. It's been super, super enlightening. We are going to dive into our end of show questions here. The same questions that we ask every person that comes on the show. And the first one, which is always the group favorite, is what is your craziest real estate investing story? It's going to be a big win, big loss, crazy transaction. You know, with 200 properties, I'm sure that you have some good stories hidden in there.
I feel like this is where I should like cue my property manager, and like she would rock in here with some solid stories. I bet. I just launched an episode of my podcast with her. Her name is Jess, and we were hashing out some stories. I don't know, man. I think one of the craziest that I personally experienced though was just when I was living in these homes. So this was, 9 years ago when I was kind of building the systems and building the model. I lived with this one guy. I just raised the rent and he said he could pay it. And so I was like, okay, you can pay it. And I didn't have paperwork. I didn't have these membership agreements. I didn't have any of these rules or things that I was telling you guys about earlier. And he just became kind of a crazy person. And I was really into Tony Robbins at the time. And so he would knock on my door I would like do my bouncing on my trampoline and do my like incantations and say my affirmations and stuff. And he would say the craziest things to me. He'd knock on my door at like 2 a.m. and I didn't vet him. I didn't do a background check. It was like the worst. This guy never should have rented. But he would be like, he'd say the weirdest things. He'd be like, I know what you do in your private time. Your vice is going to kill you. And I'd just be like, what the heck? Like this guy was like, he'd come in, I don't know if he was high or drunk or whatever. And then he would, and then be like, I know you're trying to be that Tony Robbins guy. You will never make it. And it was just like this weird negative thing. And I would like start recording them and stuff. It's just this weird ass story. I'll never forget it the day I die. He was just like his negativity was insane. So that's probably the craziest like tenant story.
Yeah,
that is weird.
Yeah. So did you end up like kicking him out or just?
Yeah,
like,
but I didn't have a lease or anything. So like it was very difficult to like try to evict him. But eventually he left. It took him like 3 weeks. But yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Dude, that's so weird.
Yeah. Always the weirdos. That's part of the real estate game, unfortunately.
Yeah, man. They're out there.
Awesome. All right. What is your number one tip for a small time investor looking to scale their real estate business?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of hit on a bunch of them. I would just probably go back to some of the things we've shared, and that is that you finding someone that, it's so cliche to say, but it is the thing. Like it's cliche because it's true. Like if you right now do not have somebody that is like steps ahead of you in the process, whether that's you guys or someone doing co-living or someone doing wholesaling or whatever, then like you're trying to do it on your own and you're just wasting so much time and money by not having a mentor and someone to guide you on the path. And so that's always my biggest tip is like get a mentor first.
Absolutely.
I've got like 3 coaches. I got like a Tony Robbins like mindset coach right now. I'm coaching with Matt King, CEO of GoAbundance. So he's like, and then like I've got another mindset coach in our real estate course. Like it's just, having that is just so key to look at different places if you really want to play this game at a scale level.
Yeah. I mean, big picture, I don't think I know anyone that I would consider successful that hasn't had some kind of mentor
or coach or something. Absolutely.
Like it's a necessary thing. You have to learn from somewhere. And the easiest way to get to a higher position is find someone that's doing what you want to do and do whatever you can to, bring that person value and learn from them. So
yeah, absolutely agree.
It's a great tip. But awesome, Sam. And then last question, where can people find you, follow you, and reach out to you?
Yeah, real simple. Easiest is probably just Instagram, like at Sam Wegert, Wegert, on Instagram, or we do these free events once a month. They're these 5-day challenges where people can kind of find out more about co-living, dive into some more of the nuances of it. So if someone's interested in that, you just have to register, get on the wait list for the next one. You go to scaleyourrealestate.com, scaleyourrealestate.com.
Perfect.
Awesome. And you said you have your own podcast as well?
We do. We launched a podcast called Scale Your Real Estate. Yeah.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Right on.
Easy to remember.
Co-living should be in the name. I think that was a mistake that I made, but it's basically like scale your co-living is really what it's about.
You can always rebrand it. We rebranded our show after episode like 4.
Yeah. We used to be the No BS Real Estate Podcast.
Yeah. For like
which was a total BS name.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, Then we
Wait,
changed
that's a good
it.
name. Why did you change it?
Because there were some other white dudes that had it. We didn't want to be associated with them. We didn't even Google it. We just started rolling with it. And then we changed it after like episode 4.
I'm totally rebranding. Thank you guys for that encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. So awesome, Sam, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, dude. You dropped an incredible amount of knowledge and I really enjoyed your enthusiasm approaching it. And honestly, dude, you got me thinking. I'm like, it doesn't exist here in Spokane yet, but why?
Maybe it needs to.
Exactly. Honestly, we need to go and we can have another conversation about that.
So what we can do, real simply, we can run some test ads before you buy any properties. We can send some. This is what I encourage everybody to do in a new market. Like we run some ads. You can run it on Facebook Marketplaces, where honestly we get most of our leads from Facebook Marketplace, and you can just don't have to put in an address. And you can, when people respond, we'll send them this Google form and be like, actually, we're creating a waiting list for this home. Fill out this info. You'll be at the top of the waiting list. And I ask them like what their budget is. And do they know this is co-living and not the whole house for $700?
Yeah.
And then like what their date of move-in is, who they are, and like and anyway, you can get so much data in an instant by creating kind of what looks like a real ad, but it's really just you trying to create a waiting list for your first home. That's a great way to test a market.
I love it. That's right out of the 4-Hour Workweek too, which is like my always sort of go-to book. He talks about how to test these business ideas before you spend too much time on them. But man, it makes perfect sense, dude. I love it. So another tip, right, to finish off. Very awesome. So awesome, guys. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this show with Sam Wegert. If you didn't, I don't know what to tell you. Please just unsubscribe from our show because that was about as good as it gets. So there was so much incredible knowledge there. And definitely reach out to Sam. He does some awesome stuff on social media, and check out his new podcast as well. And if you have any questions about co-living or you are interested in this in your market, he's your go-to guy. So don't be afraid to hit him up. People come on these shows because they want you to reach out to them. So don't be shy. We're all nice. Everyone that Dan and I associate with has some level of credibility. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on here. So don't be afraid to hit up Sam. But besides that, everybody, we appreciate you all, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to Collecting Keys. Drop us a 5-star review on iTunes and send us a screenshot to Mike@collectingkeys.com for your chance to receive a free Collecting Keys t-shirt.